Hello again, my name is Rodney Reynolds, and this is yet another video review. Today I will be looking at Shuttle's AK35GTR Motherboard. What's included here, of course, is the motherboard itself. I'll go into this and the layout of this a little later. And they do include two ATA133 cables in with this, as well as a floppy cable. You have two extra USB connectors, which would give you a total of using 6 USB ports on this motherboard. Of course, you have a driver's disc. You also have a connector here for the audio. This is actually the base for the audio. I'll show you how that goes connected a little later. And of course, you have the manual. Let's now have a look at the layout on this motherboard. As you can see here, it does come with the standard AGP slot, 1, 2, or 4 times AGP, 6 PCI slots. It also comes with 4 banks of DDR memory. Of course, this is where your CPU would be. Also, it has RAID on board. That's right here. Connect your RAID. It has your standard connections for your hard drives, your CD-ROM drives, DVD drives right here, and your floppy drive right here. Remember, this motherboard does support ATA133. Also in this motherboard is the center and base control. This is an extra for the audio. This does come with it. Right here is where you'll be plugging your DVD or your CD audio in right here. Of course, the USB ports, which I mentioned earlier, there's 2 of them, which would equal 4 right here and right here. You would get a total then of 6 with the ones on the back. At the back here, we have a place to put your keyboard and your mouse, USB connections, which are standard, of course, on the back of most motherboards right here, your LPT port right here, COM ports right here, and this motherboard also comes with the C media audio, the gain ports here. Of course, you have the in and outs as well as mics right here, and don't forget the extra center base option, which I showed you earlier. At the very top left here, we have the standard Cmos features. In here, of course, you will find very standard features. These features are found in almost every single motherboard. Things like the date, the time, the IDE drives, the primary master and slave, secondary master and slaves, your floppy drive setup in here as well. Here we have the advanced BIOS features. Within here we have things like the CPU L1 cache, the L2 cache, also things like the first, second, and third boot device. This is good because if you want to boot into your CD-ROM drive or your floppy drive or maybe your SCSI or maybe even your hard drive, you can do that and set it up in sequence, which one you want to have first, second, or third. We have the advanced chipset features. In here you'll find different things like the video RAM cacheable, the system BIOS cacheable. You can go down here to enable or disable those. At the very top here we have the DRAM clock drive control. In here, this is where you would be setting your memory timings and different other options. You can also in here adjust the settings to manual or by speed, which is really automatic settings, depending on what memory you actually have. Going on in the same category, we have the AGP and P2P bridge control. Within here you can change your aperture size, and you can also enable and disable things like the fast write. And also in here we have the CPU and PCI bus control. You can go in here and of course enable and disable things like the post write and the delay transaction. Also, there is an option here called integrated peripherals. You can go in here and enable and disable things like the on-chip IDE channels 1, 0. This is of course where your hard drives or your devices like your CD-ROMs, DVDs would be installed. You also got an area in here, the on-chip PCI device. You can go in here and enable and disable the C media audio or the Hi-Point onboard RAID controller. Also, you have the Super I/O device. You could go in here and change things like the FDC controller, the COM ports, the parallel ports, as well as the MIDI ports. Further down here in the same category, we have the on-chip USB controller. In here you have the option, of course, of enabling all, disabling all, or a combination of 1 and 2, 2 and 3, or 1 and 3. Also right here we have the USB keyboard support. You can have this enabled or disabled depending if you have a USB keyboard connected. And the last thing here is the IDE hard drive block mode. Of course you can enable or disable that feature. Right here we have a power management setup. Within here we have things like the ACPI function, suspend types, the hard drive power downs, the video power downs, and so on. Right here we have the plug and play and PCI configurations. In here you have things like the plug and play OS install. If you do have an operating system that does support plug and play, of course you would want to select yes to this option. At the bottom left here we have a PC health status. In here you can set things like the CPU warning temperature, so the system will warn you when it reaches a certain temperature, and of course you can adjust this setting. And at the very bottom there's also a shutdown temperature, and what this does of course is shut down the system once it reaches a certain temperature, and you can of course adjust that as well. The other things here, you can see the current system temperature, the current CPU 1 temperature, you can see your current fan speeds, and there's other voltage settings in here as well, which